about this himself. And of course, there are many questions which I'd like to put to him, and there may be good answers to them. And at the moment, we're sort of talking about the guy behind his back, which is a little unkind.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I have a question. What do you see as the direction of Project Avalon now, and your project and what you're doing, and Project Camelot?
That's a great question, and it'd be very interesting actually to have Kerry on the show as well, so we can answer this together. And it sounds like she's there. Is she there?
Hi there. Yes.
Hey,
welcome, Kerry Cassidy to Spectrum Radio Network. We're having a conference with Bill Ryan, and I'm here, Scott Jordan, my co-host Tom Theophanis. I'm glad you could join us.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And I just asked Bill a question. He'll relate it to you.
Oh, why don't you ask the question again, actually, so that Kerry gets the whole thing from the horse's mouth, and then we can both answer this together, and it's a lot of fun. Because you came in just at the exact perfect entrance. We even laid it all out for you. And it wasn't planned.
I had a question about the direction now of Project Avalon, which is Bill's project, and Project Camelot, which is a shared project between the two of you. What do you see coming up for the next year or so?
Let me have a shot at this first of all, and I won't talk for as long as I've been talking for the.
Good luck with that.
Right. There's a significant overlap between Kerry's view and my view of the questions that we've got to ask, the answers to those questions, and we've got a huge shared database of experience. And a lot of people out there, including ourselves, are delighted to know that we're working very well behind the scenes on a number of projects. And we talk to each other very regularly, and we're in very strong agreement about I think almost everything that we've been talking about on this show. And I'm going to be delighted to be part of a much wider ranging conversation that's going to include all of this and much more with David Wilcock and Richard Hoagland, and that means that no one will ever get any of us to shut up when we all get talking together about all of this. And this is a project which I'm delighted to be part of. At the moment, it's very appropriate that I'm kind of following my interests and that Kerry's kind of following hers. But what we've been discovering is that there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of common ground. There's lots of room for us to continue to work closely together. And yet there's a justification for us continuing to have an independent sort of platform for me to say, well, this is what I'm interested in, and this is what I think, and this is what I'm following up, and this is what I'm researching. In the meantime, Kerry's doing her counterpart to that. But we do have some common projects which we're going to really enjoy rolling out next year if all goes well. Kerry, what do you say to all this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's speaking of this weekend on Sunday with David Wilcock and Richard Hoagland. I mean, all these people, ourselves included, can actually talk up a storm. So I have no idea. Orchestrating that sort of coming together of the minds is going to be very fascinating also. And a challenge, and should be a lot of fun, especially between David and Richard, because the two of them are, as most people will know, both flamboyant equally in their own right, I would say. Of course, they're wonderful minds. And then, of course, there's Bill and I, which we're not quite as outspoken, I don't think, although I think maybe I'm a little more towards that end of the spectrum. But anyway, maybe in a different way. But yes, in answer to your question, I think that we are working behind the scenes on some projects, and I think that as we go forward, there's obviously some synchronicities that are going on that cause us to want to maybe publish or co-publish together. But I think at the same time, we also still have, as we discovered over it's nearly 5 years that we've been in operation, that we both have very different personalities and we have some very divergent interests on top of everything. So I wouldn't want to abandon those, and we're having a lot of fun over at the Camelot Forum. And, we're
also you have a radio show.
That's right. And my radio show on American Freedom Radio on Wednesdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, I'll take this opportunity to say. And then on ArcUSUG, 11 a.m. Pacific time, and that's like 7 p.m. in England and 8 p.m. in Europe. So it's more of a European style radio show, and it has no commercials. And that's on Fridays, and I have Bill Brown on Friday, and I have Richard Dolan, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So that should be very exciting. But at any rate, yes, it's lovely to do things together, and I think that we're a great complementary team, as it were. So I think that we will continue to do things together in the future, actually.
And there could be some fun rollouts of various projects next calendar year, 2011, which we can't say a lot about at the moment because we've been working on them for the last few months. And with a little bit of luck, there could be a lot of entertainment for people in store. And that's something that we're looking forward to, but we can't say a lot about it at the moment.
Okay. Kerry, do you have any news from any insiders that you've been speaking to?
Let's see, news. It'd have to be a little more specific than that. I don't get like specific news other than what I put on my blog. My blog, for those who don't know, is extremely active. And so I post there daily at this point, and sometimes multiple times during the day. I'm also writing articles as I go. And what will happen there is that I will post tips that I'm getting from various insiders as we go along. And that depends on whether or not there's an incident in particular to discuss. And so, with the missile that was off the coast of California, I was getting multiple reports from various different insiders. That was all playing out very interestingly. I think ultimately I had Sean David Morton on my radio show on American Freedom Radio, and that show is archived for those of you that are interested. And his insider information seemed to maybe trump some of the information we were getting from other sources. But it's unclear, and that information was not completely clear as it came through. So I don't consider that story, for example, to be a closed one. I think that that's a still open story, and I think we're still it's still worth pursuing for those researchers out there that want to compare notes. But at any rate, if you do want to compare notes, then I'd suggest you pay a visit to my blog, see what I was writing back then, see what my insiders were saying, and compare that to my radio show. And then also, the same thing goes for the BP oil spill. And again, we're getting various information. And I have to say the information about the Gulf of Aden as well. So there's a lot of mixed stuff coming in, and it just depends on what kind of subject you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. What I would I'd just like to get a question. Is there any questions for Bill and Kerry? I have one here from Petroleum, and that's the opinion on the Sweden change of law to have more control over the net and co-opt the U.S. FBI, thanks to the lonely suicide bomber in Stockholm. Any thoughts on that?
My take is that that's not connected.
Okay.
I mean, of course, when Sweden starts coming up in the news in lots of different ways, you start thinking, wait a minute, what's happening here? But it's a little hard to manufacture a connection. there. That's my take on that.
Yeah. Kerry,
well, actually, I mean, I don't know. I have to delve into that more deeply, but the whole Julian Assange charges, the situation with WikiLeaks and the situation with freedom on the net is obviously linked. But what is being orchestrated, for example, and what Norway, I have to say Norway and Sweden, very, very strong strongholds of the Illuminati and above, let's say, as well as certain ETs that I'm aware of. I have to say that there's something going on there that's quite dark, in my view.
Okay.
And so it's not surprising that something like that would come out of Sweden at this time. I think the crackdowns going on in the northern part of the hemisphere, if you will, are a symptom of some very interesting dynamics going on.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess we have one more question from
Undead Pixel.
For Kerry. What is your opinion on David Wilcock's China's October surprise?
You mean the gifts that were set at the sort of doorstep of all the countries? Well, I mean, I did make a blog post very specifically about China, and yeah, for those that are listening here, I will say that was addressed to David, but and to a few other people. But and what I did say in that, for those of you who, if you go to my website, projectcamelotproductions.com, you will see that I've created a new page called Articles. And that way you don't have to search through my whole blog in order to get some of my more succinct articles that I'm starting to write. And one of those was just a very short article about China and a cautionary note telling people that I don't see China as the next new world savior, so to speak, by any stretch of anyone's imagination. What Fulford, in essence, and Wilcock is saying it, but basically his information comes from Fulford and that kind of camp, if you will. And I'm saying that I don't, Ben Fulford is just the most delightful guy, and it was absolutely thrilling to go in person and meet him. And that was one of the rare Camelot moments in which we, again, did what we did with Buriska. We basically kind of took the bull by the horns and just went for it, and had no idea we'd actually make it there, and had no idea how we'd pay for it, and so on and so forth. But it all worked out. And for those of you who haven't seen our interview with Benjamin Fulford, then I highly recommend it, because I think we got more information out of him than anyone has even since. But I have to say also that he has been manipulated heavily. And I do think that he's working for the good. So that's a very bottom line. And he's a very good-hearted guy, and he wants the best for the world. But I don't think his handlers, so to speak, do necessarily.
And I would completely concur with that. Let me say, I think Kerry stated exactly correctly.
What's your thoughts, Bill, on the surprise packages?
I agree with Kerry, actually, on pretty much everything that he said. I think that let me think. I'm not sure if I could improve on what Kerry has said, actually. It might be better to take the next question, to squeeze a few questions on, because I do actually agree with everything that Kerry said, and I think that you said it in a way that I couldn't improve on, certainly regarding certainly regarding Fulford, and the way that I believe he is being influenced or manipulated in some ways. I certainly do not believe everything that I believe on his blog, and I don't believe it quite as much as I think David Wilcock does, and it could well be that this is a very interesting conversation that we'll get into on Sunday.
Okay. I have a question from Luke, and it's a quick question, and And actually, no, it's from Sizemorg.